Welcome back, everyone. Continuing work on a pair of frame locks. I've got a couple liner locks as well. Several videos I've been working on these if you'd like to go back and check them out. But right now I'm focused on the two frame locks. One's a feather pattern blade and the other one is a stainless blade. So I've got them together here and just checking everything out, making sure they all work good. You know, just free opening and closing in the bearings. In the frame, they're centering, everything looks good. I've got just a little bit more work to do on the frames. I've got to come in and machine away the lock bar relief here so that it'll actually flex. Right now, even if you bent it, you couldn't open and close it, it'd be too stiff. So I'm gonna bring this down to probably 45 thousandths with an end mill over on the mill, and I'll get both of those done. And then I can do some contouring before I actually do the relief on the release of the lock bar. And that'll come just a little later. Then we get the blades ground and get them finished out. So right now, let's get over to the mill. All right, so what I've got set up here is pretty much a machinist's nightmare. But that's how I got it set up. That's how I'm gonna cut it. But I figured I'd show you. It is pretty similar, actually the same way that I cut the lock bar. I've got a couple parallel bars here with a couple drill bits stuck in the start and stop holes for that cut lock bar. And I just take these pins and set them on those bars where I know that I'm straight and level with the lock bar. So when I cut this relief, it'll be square with it. That's all. That's the only reason I'm doing it. Now, and I'm just biting it in there with the vise. Now I'm gonna come in here with the end mill and cut in about 112, 13 thousandths, something like that, to leave me with about 48, 47 thousandths. 45 is good. I don't like to go below 45. In between 45 and 50 thousandths to leave there for the lock bar spring. And like I've said in the previous video, this little series here is actually, I'm just vlogging my daily chores here. If you would like to see detailed builds, check out my playlist on frame locks and liner locks, where I really go into details. However, I do drop a lot of different details in this series. It's kind of hard not to as you're making these videos. Otherwise, it would just be a bunch of shots of me doing the work. And a lot of you seem to prefer that I would do that. So I'm just letting you know as I go. So a couple things here, figure I'd show you. The reason I use a ball end mill is you don't want a sharp edge right here. You don't want a square cut there. You want to gently come out of there. So it's a slope there formed by the end of that end mill that's shaped round. Call it a ball end mill. I use a 5/16 ball end mill to do that cut. I take about no more than 4 thousandths, 3 to 4 thousandths each pass. And it has a lot to do with the way I'm set up there. It's kind of sketchy. You really need some support behind this so you don't have chatter. Because you get chatter, you know, it won't be a good finish. And you could have your end mill grab and yank that piece out of there. So I take my time, and I get good, smooth cuts. And deal with any chatter by not cutting so deep. All right, I've decided to go ahead and release the lock bar before I do the contouring. What I'll do is wedge that lock bar where it can't move when I'm contouring. I've done it many times. But since I'm already set up doing this milling operations, I figured I'd do the last one. So I'm gonna come in here and you can see how I got it set up there and just saw that line in till we're done. And that'll be it. So we'll get her going here. All right, this is another one of those details that, you know, I make these tutorials. This one's not, but I figure that, you know, I know there's a lot of things I miss, but this is going to be the lock bar that's moved over here. I've just got it forced over and wedged with a piece of brass. And what I like to do is come in here where this bar is going to come over and hit the lock face. Is take this little needle file and knock this corner off. And what that does is it prevents you from having a stick right there, you know, from sticking and binding. It'll be a smooth crossover there when it locks up. I just lightly take that corner off. I'll come here and make sure that there's no burr there. And I've still got to harden this lock bar. I don't know if you can see that, but there's a slight bevel there. And that'll save you a little frustration right off the bat. Just a simple little knock that corner off. It's kind of rounded because it's going to lock up right here. That's where you want your lock to happen, because your lock face is going to be tapered back a little bit where you're only going to have it locking right here. It's good and smooth there, no burr. All right, so I went ahead and made the pocket clips, and that way I can go ahead and drill them through the frames while these frames are good and flat. It's so much easier to do it now. And I'll have that out of the way. And before I do the contouring, because it's a pain sometimes when they're not flat. So I'm gonna get these knocked out. So I'll deburr that hole here and drill the other one. Now I'll have to go back and oversize the clip because I'm gonna thread the frame. So I'll come back with a number 44 and drill it out, drill the clip out. And counterbore them. And tap the frames. So another little tip is when you bind screws, in this case I'm using button heads, when you can, try to get a variety of lengths because you'll have options. I've got to go cut these because I only have 2 different lengths and they won't work. But what I'm cutting is so that I'm not protruding here on the inside. And I have a sacrificial piece of plate here, stick a screw in there. I know how long it needs to be. I go grind it off with a disc sander. Now, Alan Elishewitz makes a tool, or he used to, for doing that. You can cut your screws, but you will need to take out a loan to get it. Nothing wrong with that. It's just, it is what it is, you know. It's expensive, but sometimes it pays to get the tool. If I had that tool, it'd speed my job up big time right now. So I have to cut 4 of these to length. So I run to the grinder. All right, that's them. Screws are down below the frames, and the pocket clips are mounted. Now, there's a lot of work left to do with pocket clips. I have to mill out the insides so they'll spring. I'll have them down to about 40 thousandths, somewhere around in there. Little decorative work, cleanup work to do on them. It actually takes longer to mill these pocket clips than any milling operation I've got to do on these things. It's a lot of work to make a custom pocket clip. And that's why when you look online to buy one of these things, a titanium pocket clip that's milled out of a single piece of titanium, it'll cost $100 or so. And I see why. It takes a lot of time to make them. So I'll get these off, put them together, and now I'm ready to profile. I'll come back and do all this milling last on the pocket clip. It'll be one of the last things I do. I just want to get that done while they were flat, get those holes drilled and tapped, because it's a pain when you contour and trying to drill a hole on a contoured shape surface. Now I also would have to most likely contour the bottoms of these pocket clips. I'll do it after I mill them. That way I'm only contouring a small section, and like this on the bottom of the clip. A little bit of work. All right, we're gonna get them together. I'm gonna blue the outside, scribe me a center mark in here so I'll have a reference line, put them together and go over to the grinder and profile them, contour. All right, I know you can't see very well here. This lighting is pretty bad, but I've got some marks here. But basically I'm gonna contour it. I'm gonna work it up to about 600 grit. Then I'll hand sand them from there. So we'll get them going. All right, thought I'd stop a second and show you a little something that'll really make the difference for you. It's a game changer for me. I've done it, used this on different kinds of knife making. And not the cat, but it is a leather backed platen. What I have is a piece of leather glued to a piece of 3/8 hard felt. Still got a little give. And what this does, it's very forgiving. I will use a glass-backed platen up to 400 grit. Then when I switch to 600, I put the felt backer on here, platen, take the glass off, and I finish out that way. And what it'll do is if you get any little trash on that glass platen, while you're doing this operation, without cleaning it each and every time, you'll have little divots in here. And what I want is good, smooth transition, good contour. I mark it so I can see what I'm doing here. And you can see there, it looks like, tiger stripes. And that lets me know where I'm at as I'm grinding. But the leather-backed platen is huge help. Let me get my pet out of the way. You go over there. Now I use it for chef's knives, big wide knives, all kinds of stuff, but it works great for an operation like this. And yeah, I mean, when you're finishing up, I'm gonna finish up to 600, and these things are gonna be clean, very clean and smooth. I've got this side to do. I've got this one done, and I'm ready to go. Now, another thing I wanted to mention, I already cut the lock bars, and I mentioned it, I think I did, that I'll wedge it in place where it can't move, and there's a little piece of wood there, it's a wooden wedge. This one just fell out, but that's how I keep as I'm contouring, to keep that bar from moving, and that way I keep an even contour. Leather-backed platen, can't beat it. All right, now what I'm doing is just I put them back together. I had to replace a couple screws because I sanded into them, but I always use some old temporary ones anyway, and so that wasn't an issue, because as you contour, you might get into the head a little bit, and so I just replaced them, made sure I'm still under. And what I do if I'm not is I take it over back to the counterboard, just bump it a little bit and get that head down below the surface there. But everything else looking good. I will have to do a little work on the pocket spacers because of the contour. I'll have to contour the bottoms where they connect. That's pretty simple with a 1/2-inch wheel, something like that. Just stick it up there. You could even use a large wheel as long as it matches your contour. Now I'm going to come in here and I'm going to soften these edges. And from here back to the backspacer, you don't want to go past the backspacer, but I'm going to soften that because your fingers run in here and you don't want these sharp edges. They'll cut your finger. Same here. So I'll get that done. Then we're going to get set up to drill and install our detent. Actually, I'll drill it. Then I will run over and harden this lock face. Then we'll install the detent. Okay, this is from my buddy in East Tennessee. So I've got my detent hole marked. You know, whether this is a FrameLock or a liner lock, it doesn't matter. I've got it marked there, and I've got it taped closed. And what I do is I take a clamp like this and just put a light amount of pressure on it because it'll flex a little bit. And then I tape it to hold it. And it's not much. You don't put a tremendous amount of pressure on there, but if you push on it, you can get a little flex there when you're pushing it more closed. And so when I, brace it, clamp it, and tape it, also the lock bar is sitting flat on the blade. There's no gap there. So when I drill through, it's going to be in the position that it'll be when the blade's closed. Pretty close to it. I won't have any gap to cause any slop. But more importantly, I've got it down as far as it'll go, and there won't be any rock or looseness or slop, whatever you want to call it, in the finished blade or in the finished detent. Now I'm going to take it over and drill it and see how it works. I screw these up sometimes myself, so I take my time with it, try to get it right. All right, I'm gonna go ahead and harden the lock bar face of it. I don't carbonize. I use torch. I heat it up to very bright. You don't want to melt it, and let it air cool. It'll be plenty hard. It'll hold for a very long time. Learned this from an Australian knife maker friend who's no longer with us now, but he passed that along to me. Works great. After I harden it, I'm going to install the clean it up. I do this before I put the detent in so I can clean it up. And then I'll put the detent in and bend the lock bar. And I'll bend it by heating up that web. I'm not gonna go crazy with it. But you can see I got it propped open there. I'm just gonna get on the face of it. And that'll do it. I'll let it cool. Do the next one and get a little closer here for you. And that's it. Let it cool. Now I'll clean it off, put the detent in, and I'll come right back here and bend the lock bar. I'm gonna go ahead and grind the lock faces and get them locking up. I do this from time to time. You know, if you screw up a blade after you've done all that grinding, hand sanding, and then screw the lock face up, that was a lot of wasted time. So I do like to go ahead and do this. It just depends on what mood I'm in at the time, but I've got my rest set up here at 7.5 degrees. I'm just using a digital angle finder. I'll zero out on my platen without this belt in the way. I got a glass platen that's been cleaned, and I'll zero and then set 7.5 degrees right here. Now, people use anywhere from 7 to 8, but I'll get right in the middle there, 7.5. And I'll take a couple times, maybe 3 times. Sometimes I get it in 1, but those scare me. But you don't want to overgrind. You need something to see with. So I've got it marked, and if you want to see details of how I do all this, go back and look at the playlist I have, because I'll go in a little more detail. So we're going to get this baby ground. And don't pay any attention to the lighting setup I got here. I got some lights coming. I just had to put something here because I have to see this. Looking pretty good. You want to make sure they won't close. Test those locks. I try to get early lockup. Now, there's a tip that I'm going to mention here. I don't know if I've ever mentioned it before. When you bend your lock bar, make sure it's bent enough that you've got plenty of pressure on it so that when you grind your lock face on your blade, that bar, when it does get lockup, doesn't have any ability to move anymore, because you can overgrind your lock face. And if you do that, you've ruined your blade for this frame anyway. So I make sure that bar is strong enough, because if it's too light, you'll think you don't have enough lockup, and you'll go over there to the grinder, hit it again, and you've overground it because your lock is weak to begin with. So just make sure that it is bent over enough. Now I can grind the blades. Well, I think we got them done. Looking pretty good. There's still a little cleanup to do, but not much. I'll break them in a little bit by opening them and closing them a lot until I can adjust the pivot where I want it. And then I will Loctite everything. I'll use blue Loctite, but they come out pretty good. I'll have some shots here for you at the end. This is the feather, and all come out pretty good. I try to match the pocket clip color to some of the colors or one of the colors inside the frame. And this is there's a lot of purple in there, so I thought it'd match pretty good. Got our Damascus backspacer. She works sweet. Drop point and a clip point. But I hope you got something out of that vlog, 4-part series. But there's a lot of little details here and there that I hope you was able to pick up. And there'll be more on these liner locks. I'm going to have them, they're about 50% right now because I pulled off of them. But there'll be some more things there we can cover because they're liner locks, whole different deal with scales. One of them's going to have mammoth on it. It's going to be fun. So appreciate you watching. I want to thank my patrons. We're going to see you on the next one, and here's some shots.